exercise is from week 12. So let me just show from the very beginning, just in case you haven't done that. So you can go to the course website and you can go to lab materials, and then you'll see that under week 12, so there is the starter code for lab 2. If you click on that and save that, you can see the zip file. Save that somewhere, let's say to your desktop. Okay, if you do that, so now if you go to your Eclipse, we're going to import that. So you would say File, import, and then you have to type existing projects into workspace. So, and then next, and select archive file, and then you can go to browse. And when you browse, you can browse to desktop where you store the zip file. Click on that, and now you can see that. So there is this CSE114 Spring 16 Week 12 Lab 2 projects there, and then you can say finish. And then it's now being imported to your Eclipse. Okay, I believe most of you have done this already. Okay, let's just go over very quickly about how you can implement the equals method and the toString method. Okay, I just wouldn't spend the time typing out the tester which we did last time. So I will simply just tell you how to do the equals method in toString. Let's do side by side. So remember, we actually got the following structure. So we got clients. So each client has a number of accounts, and each account has a number of transactions, I believe. Let me just double check. Yes. And also we got banking system. Now let's just worry about these three classes. So we want to make sure we define the equals method at each level. And if you refer to the instruction there, let's just have a quick look, okay, just to make sure we're on the same page. Let me just show you the instruction very quickly, and then so we will know which classes to redefine the equals method. If you go to week 12, so over there, you will see that we say that, let me just read it to you. We only concern about the equality between accounts and clients. So two accounts are equal if their balances are equal. So we only worry about the balances, but not any ID or anything else. Okay, just the balances. So let's first of all go to the account class. You can see over there in the account class, we got ID, we got global account ID, we got owner, we got history, we got counter, we also got some final constant here. But all of them do not really matter as far as equality is concerned, since in the instruction we say that only the balances are important. Okay, so what we need, so currently there is no method for us to calculate the balance of the current account. So what I would suggest is we'll actually do a method over here. So you can say double. So you can see, so double, let's say get balance. So it will be sufficient just to go over the history of transactions and see if there's a deposit, we're gonna say this positive. If that's withdrawal, it should be negative. Okay, so now double, let's say balance. Let's say initially just 0, and then eventually we're gonna return balance. Okay, so now let's see in the middle of these two lines, how do we actually calculate the balance? Okay, let's see how we can do that. So we can walk through the array. So you can say for integer I equals 0, I less than the number, I believe it's a counter, sorry. Counter and then I plus plus. Okay, a very standard way of doing things. And now somehow we're going to either increment or decrement the balance, depending on what's the type of the transaction. So let's have some intermediate variable here. We can say the current transaction we're looking at, T, is equal to history at position I. So now, and we can also say that the character, the type of the transaction is equal to T dot type. And now we want to say if the type of the transaction is a primitive value, a character. If that happens to be deposit D, then we have to increment the balance. So we would say balance plus equal T dot amount. Okay, so it is as if we actually say balance plus equal history at position I, and then dot. So these two are equivalents. It's really up to you. So if you want to have the intermediate variable, feel free. If you don't want it, that's also fine. Otherwise, we assume that it's otherwise type is equal to W. That's our assumption, either D or W. So you can say balance minus equal T dot amount. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So maybe you have to find a similar method, just like what I'm doing now. So basically, we're going to use this helper method here to define the equality between two accounts. Once we get this method done, it's incredibly easy. So now, let's now redefine the equals method. You can do that any way you like. Let's do it here, anywhere. So you can say, redefine the equals method inherited from objects. So now let's just document that. So two accounts are equal if their balances are equal. Okay, that's our definition for equality. Okay, let's see. So now you can say Boolean equals, and then we can have account other. Any suggestion here? To say two accounts are equal, this account is equal to other accounts if their balances are equal. Any suggestion here?
This object balance equal for other account.
Very good, exactly. That's actually why we actually define the helper method. So you can, the simplest way to write, like what Jabin said, you can say return this dot get balance equal, and then other dot get balance. That's the simplest way. And notice that this over here is optional. Okay, you don't necessarily have to write it this over here. It's optional. It's implicit, but it wouldn't hurt to put it here. So you can really see this and also other. Okay, that's about the equals method. And we also want to print out the account objects. So we can say something like this. So we have to also, so there is a toString method that's inherited from the object. So let me just show you here. So if you go to Java, if you go to Google Java API objects, if you go there, let's see very quickly. If you go to the object class, you will see that there is a toString method there. Over there. So that's one of the methods that's inherited from the object class. And the toString method is going to return a string representation of the objects. For example, let's say for the accounts, the only thing we care about is the ID and also the balances. That's what we can do. We can say account with ID blah 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 has the balance something. Okay, that's what we can do. Okay, we'll try something in the tester in a moment. Okay, so now I can say that string to string. Okay, you have to type this verbatim. There cannot be any typo. So we have to make sure we actually redefine. Okay, let me say redefine the toString method inherited from objects. Okay, so now. So for now, just put a public in front. Just take it for granted. Okay. So now we're gonna say string, let's say S. Okay. Initially just empty. Let's say. Eventually you're gonna return S. So now how should we accumulate the value of S? Let's say for the account we can say something like this. We can say S plus equal account with ID. S plus equal, the ID should be just ID. S plus equal has balance and plus this dot get balance. Okay, that's a very simple description here. Okay, that's about the toString method. So you can see that we're basically trying to redefine two methods that are actually inherited from the object class. The first one is equals, which returns a Boolean. And the second one is the toString method, which returns a string. Okay, so these two methods are the most useful ones as far as 114 is concerned. Okay, so we got equals and toString. Okay, so let's say we have to go back to client class and see what to do. If you go to the client class over here, we're going to do something similar. Okay, if you go back to the instruction there, we say that two clients are equal if they have the same first name, the same number of accounts, and the accounts at each position are equal. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So now let's just go back to the very end. Okay, first of all, let's override, which means redefine. Override the equals method from object. Okay, let's say Boolean equals. So now we're talking about clients, other. Okay, so let's say this. Since we have to go over the list of accounts for the client, so you cannot just do one line return statement, so it's not possible. So let's define a variable here. So Boolean is equal. Let's do this first. Okay, return is equal. Okay, so now let's say initially that's simply equal to. Let's set the first thing first. So let's say the first name. This dot first name dot, it's a string, so we gotta use dot equals other dot first name. The first name must be equal at, first of all, and then we can do that is equal defined as, well, let's accumulate the result using conjunction, which means all the conditions have to be satisfied. Is equal ampersand. Also the number of, I believe it's a counter value, right? This dot counter equals other dot counter. So we're comparing two things so far, the first name and also the counter between this and other. So now let's go on to the accounts. So we can say for integer I equals 0. So now it's going to be, we're going to stay in the loop as long as the is equal is true, and also and then also I is less than counter I plus plus. Okay, we learned about this before, so now we can simply just update. Is equal. We don't necessarily have to use the ampersand. You can look up in your slides from before. Is equal to. So now this dot accounts at position I. And since we redefined the equals method already in the account class, so we can call that other dot accounts at position I. That's it. So basically, we are doing three things to compare. So we compare the first name, the counter, and also we have also to make sure each accounts at the corresponding positions are equal. Let me ask you this. What if this and other accounts, their first names are not equal? More precisely, what if, let's say in line number 126, if that line there returns false, so this dot first name dot equals other dot first name is false. What's going to be the consequence if we go to line 128? You will not enter the for loop. That's correct. Why?
Because we have it is equal and for the condition, state condition.
So false will actually will just make sure it's false, right? And then when we go to line 128, so false and something will just be false. So the state condition is false already. So we are not going to compare any accounts. Okay, something to note. Okay, that's the equals method. It's not too bad. So now let's see how we can do the toString method. So do let's say, let me just overwrite the toString method from object. Oh, sorry, I should really give you some space here. Okay, so just put public now to string. Okay, similar as before. So let's say string. We're going to return s, initially just empty. Return s eventually. Oh, I forgot to say it's going to return the string. Okay, so now we'd like to do, let's say, if you want to print out the clients, we can say what's the name of the clients and what's their ID, and also what's the detail about each of their accounts. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Simply print out the first name and ID is easy. So you can say s plus equal client plus first name. For example, client Jin. S plus equal has ID and then ID. S plus equal and how many accounts? It's a counter here. Of course, sometimes how to define a string output is really up to you. Okay, has this many accounts? Let's put a colon here, which means we're going to print out the details for each account. So now, since we redefined the toString method already in the account class, so now we can reuse it. So now we can say for integer I is equal to 0. Let's go over the accounts. Less than counter I plus plus. Okay, you can say s plus equal accounts at position I dot toString. That's what you can do. Let's say each time we're going to say s plus equal, let's have a new line and then a new tab, let's say. So the output might be slightly different from what's required from the instruction, but just want to give you some idea. You have to redefine the toString method and the equals method in more than one classes. So that's the point. Okay, that's about it. So you can actually try this with the test code you have in the instruction. So that's something you have to type from the handouts. And then make sure the equals method here on the two clients will return just true. And then at the end, if you try to, one thing to note. So in Java, if you, for example here, when you say system.out.println and then client 1, if you simply put a client 1 over there, you can look up the slide as well, so which you will study for the quiz on Friday. If you simply put the objects there, so println is going to implicitly call the toString method on client 1. So let me show you what I meant. There's a subtle point you have to know. So let's say this. Is that if I say print line, if I say client 1, it is as if I wrote the following. Client 1, and then it's a and it is going to call it to string method. So this line here is basically doing this. So now remember the toString method is inherited from the object class. By default, it is simply going to print the address of the clients. So that's why in the previous lecture, if I simply want to print out the address, I can simply say, for example, point. But now, because we redefined the toString methods in the relevant classes already, so it is going to call the redefined version of the toString. Okay, so that's why when you try, you're going to see the correct output. Okay, just something to note. Okay, that's a very quick walkthrough of the solution, and because I want to spend most of the time doing the practice quiz with you today, actually.